Hello, this is Omar Brownson, co-founder and CEO of gthx. gthx is a gratitude app with a mission to make good visible. I'm so excited to join you today as we practice gratitude together. Gratitude is this amazing practice that so often is hidden in plain sight. That's part of its beauty, is that it's always there. It's always in the present. And it's also part of the challenge, is that we're not always present. And so part of the practice of gratitude is to really just practice our noticing. This week, I'm excited to have Oakley Ogden join us again. She was our first guest 11 weeks ago. Can you believe that, Oakley? 11 weeks ago, you were our guest at the end of April. So much has happened in the last 11 weeks. And as Oakley and I have been in conversation since that time, and she's continued to support gthx and has contributed a few different practices in the app, which I hope you check out. We have been talking about our own learning and our own journeys. And one of the things that we hit upon was this idea of unlearning. So much of our growth is not based on what we know, but based on what we don't know. You all know the classic saying, knowledge is power. I think the truth is that it's our unknowing which empowers us. And when we move from just the knowledge of something and the awareness of something to when we actually experience it, that's what we're really seeking and looking for. One of my favorite sayings is from the Asaro tribe in Indonesia, that knowledge is just a rumor until it's felt in the bones. And I think that's what happens when we move to unlearning, is that we move from the knowledge of power, and when we can get to what we don't know, then we move into this possibility. And when we move into possibility, then we're all of a sudden in the present. We're in this particular moment because we've actually never met this moment before. This is a new moment. And so when we allow ourselves to be in this moment, then that hidden gratitude that is always present becomes revealed. And so the practices that we invite every week here on gthx or in our app are just these pauses to help us know and see and experience and feel in our bones what is present. And so I'm excited that Oakley today will be giving us a practice that we also just loaded into the app this week. So if you haven't checked it out in the app yet, you're going to get the live version now. But before we do that, I just want to just acknowledge Oakley for being an incredible co-conspirator on this journey, and somebody who has just really been willing to jump in. When she joined me 11 weeks ago, it was a Sunday. And I said, hey, would you want to be on my Zoom gthx show? And she said, sure. And I was like, when? I was like, I don't know, Thursday. And she's like, sign me up. And so thank you, Oakley, for just being that willing partner in all of this.
It's my pleasure. I just have so much fun working together, Omar, and creating together, and just so appreciate our friendship. And why wouldn't I want to be with this community and be hanging out with everybody today? It's my favorite thing. So I just loved what you said about unlearning, taking us into the present moment and possibility opening up from that present moment. I think where unlearning for me in my practice as a psychotherapist, where I've seen it so prevalent, like the most important moments of unlearning is when we get stuck, right? And usually we get stuck because what we've learned about what we're feeling or the scenario or the relationship or the story we're telling ourselves about all of it is usually the thing that needs to get unlocked so that we can outgrow it. So we can unlearn it, outgrow it, and actually take on something new that we've never considered before. And what we know now is that our brains are plastic, like way our whole lives. We thought that earlier in psychology and neuroscience, we thought that the brains were plastic, meaning they had the ability to shift and learn and restructure themselves and send new pathways for just a period of time, like a window of like a decade. And then when you learned all that stuff, sorry, like good luck, have a good life, but this is not the case at all. Not at all. We can reprogram, rewire, create new neural pathways for our entire lives. And so I think that taking on unlearning as a practice unto itself can create possibilities in our lives that I think for myself, I didn't even know were possible until I unlearned certain belief patterns, certain belief systems that I had actually learned from my environment and I had learned from my primary caregivers, my mom and dad in my case.
I love what you said about this place of unknowing being often found when we're stuck. And to unstick ourselves, to unlock it, this juxtaposition, we're locked, we're stuck. And to move, we have to unlock and unstick. That I think is just really, and the thing is that happens every day. As we get stuck in a moment, something snags us, an emotional attachment to something. And somebody comes in the room and you're just perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden, you find yourself in that moment. And I think that's, again, each day we find ourselves. And so that's really, I think the practice that you're going to lead us through is about in these everyday moments when we find ourselves stuck by whatever it is, how do we unstick ourselves and give ourselves an opportunity to learn and grow in that moment?
Yep, from contraction to expansion, honestly. And these are practices, I mean, there's been times in my life where I have kind of dared myself to take this one practice that you'll learn today and just see how many times I could use it in a day. And I did that for 1 week. I didn't even do it for a week, the whole week. I did from Monday through Friday.
Wow.
And what it did was it started creating this knowing that I could open past these stuck moments. And so by Friday, I was like, wow, that's really just a habit of mine to get stuck there because I have a story that I don't want to feel that feeling because it's bad or it's wrong or it fires me up or, it wasn't allowed in my house or whatever it is. And so undoing this, and so I unlearned so many things about feelings in the last 20 years. Just unlearning, being like, well, that's okay. It wasn't until really recently, right, that like kind of the catchphrase, like, your anger is okay, has like become a thing. Like anger wasn't okay in like so many households. Now you see these young moms who are like, well, it's okay to be angry, honey. Like that's not what was happening 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So how can we unlearn, and really, I see it as kind of like unblocking, like taking the dam out and letting things flow so we can be more in alignment with the movement of life through us.
That focus on emotions, I thought emotions were wild beasts, that they just roamed and that you didn't have any control over them. And so the idea was to just suppress them. So it was either they were wild or there was suppression and there was nothing in between. And I think through the practice of gratitude and I think, really learning that emotions are more like clouds. They just come and they go. You don't have to get caught in their rain. You don't have to get caught in their thunderstorm. But you can also appreciate a lightning storm. So just because it's flashing does not mean it's negative. And those are attachments to what is positive or negative. Like an emotion is actually neither positive nor negative. Anger is not good or bad. It's only our attachments and judgments that we link to them that create that sense of, is this good or is this bad? And so all of a sudden, if a storm is brewing, if you have some distance to it, an electrical storm is beautiful. And unless we let ourselves get sucked in and then we're drenched, then all of a sudden we're like, wait a second. But even then, a storm will pass. So help us figure out how to let those storms pass even faster, Oakley.
Let's do this. So wonderful. So can people relate to what Omar and I are talking about? If you can you just lift your hand so I can see? Oh, wow. Okay. So you're feeling it. Okay. That's awesome. And before we launch in, because we'll do this, we'll practice today a couple times, because it really only takes a minute, but you can get so good at this that you can just run through it and move your emotions through. The idea of evolution as a spiritual being, as an emotional being, as a mental being, is not about not feeling, right? It's not about transcending to the point where, like, I'm sorry, I just don't get angry. Like, I'm just like an angel all day, every day for the next like 80 years of my life. Like, I'm fine. That is not a thing, right? I have spent many, 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 many years, even decades, with extraordinary masters of energy on this planet. I've been in India. I've been all over the world with these incredible teachers. They all have and express the full spectrum of emotion. The only difference is they don't get caught in it. I've seen it with my own eyes for years on end. They just don't get caught. When my beautiful teacher lost her teacher, he passed away. In their tradition, they say left the body. And she would just cry and cry and cry. And then she would arrive at a workshop and she'd see all her students and just, and then that was the present moment. And then the next minute she was thinking about service and having us write something down for another participant and this and that. It was just present moment to present moment. And everything that arose was allowed to move with grace and fluidity. And it just didn't live into the next moment where it didn't belong. That, to me, when I saw that in my younger days, in my 20s, that to me redefined freedom. Emotional freedom. I was like, oh, I was trying to do something different. I was trying to hand select the feelings I thought were good and then sort of retire the ones that I didn't like and that I knew other people didn't like in me. And so that got blown up. And what arose in its place was a willingness to expand my capacity to relate to the full spectrum of feelings that moved inside of me in my life and in a day. If I could be related to them and responsible for them and allow them to move, surface, and not create havoc, I could just feel angry but not have anything bad happen as a result of that. Then I knew that I was free to move in relationship, in the world, in my career in a totally new way. So today I'm going to share with you one of the tools that started me on this journey. And it's called Acknowledge, Accept, Welcome. Acknowledge, accept, welcome. And in this practice, we first acknowledge the feeling that we're feeling. And it's good to start with maybe an irritation, a little trigger feeling. If you don't feel any of that, you can also use joy or clarity or power. You can use a positive, love-based feeling. But this is it really moves the kind of fear-based is what I call them. They're not negative per se, but just based in more of a contracted energy, the fear-based spectrum of emotion, right? And first we acknowledge what we're feeling. I mean, how many of us actually stop during a day and say, oh, I'm really feeling overwhelmed? I don't, just for the record, like I still don't. Yesterday I had so much happening, and I noticed over the course of a couple hours, I was sending emails, on the phone, doing all this stuff, seeing clients, and I got like tighter and tighter and tighter. And I was like, what is going on here? And I was like, oh my God, I feel overwhelmed. Wow. I didn't even name it. So I stopped and I was like, in this moment, I acknowledge that I feel overwhelmed. Step one. So what we're doing is we're just calling it a timeout for the stream that's happening around us. And we just drop into our bodies, drop into our own worlds. In this moment, I acknowledge I feel overwhelmed. You see, because we spend so much time avoiding feelings and ducking and weaving feelings. So now I'm sort of stopped and I'm looking at the feeling face to face. I acknowledge you. How good actually does it feel to be acknowledged? You know, if you have a feeling and a friend is like, I really see you, that does something to us. And feelings are just energy, right? So here we are, kind of the master of these energies unknowingly, what we're moving into the awareness now. And we just stop. I acknowledge that I feel you. Does that make sense? The second stage is accepting it. Now, this can trip people up. We think that by accepting overwhelm or anger or grief, we're saying we're okay with it. Like, okay, rule my life. I accept you. You're here. That's not the case. We're just accepting that it's there. I acknowledge you, and guess what? I accept that you're there. It's okay. Have a cup of tea, hang out, be here. Or I accept that it's raining outside. There's nothing I can do about it. It's just there. Accept it. So I acknowledge, I accept, and then I welcome the energy of this feeling into my heart. Now, this can feel a little bit woo-woo spiritual for some people. So I want to break it down just for a moment, more in a kind of magnetic field, quantum physics sort of way. So the heart itself as a muscle puts out an electromagnetic field. And many people call this the torus. And this electromagnetic field can be measured, and it's extremely powerful. And it's a movement. And the same pattern of the electromagnetic field that cycles out and into the heart all day is actually mimicked. The earth has the same exact one. So you can find these toruses, these electromagnetic fields that are sort of planted around the earth, right? So our heart has this electromagnetic field. So when I say bring it into our hearts, I'm saying trust that your heart, the energy of your heart, the electromagnetic field of your heart is so powerful on its own, just by you being alive in a human body, is so powerful on its own that this feeling doesn't even stand a chance of existing after you bring it into this high frequency called the heart. The heart is a love-based frequency. I don't mean feeling like I'm in love. I mean like expansive feeling, an expansive frequency, a very high vibrational frequency as its measurement. And if I'm bringing overwhelm, which is a fear-based frequency, into the heart, it's like a tuning fork, right? And for all of us who know what a tuning fork is and how it works, it's the thing that tells everything else around it what frequency to start vibrating at. So we treat our field, the torus in the heart, as the tuning fork. We have it inbuilt. I mean, it's kind of crazy we don't learn this in school as a kid, because we have this inbuilt tuning fork to shift our emotions that just lives in us. It's kind of like mind-blowing. Right? So if I say, in this moment, I acknowledge, I feel overwhelmed. And I accept that I feel overwhelmed. And I bring this feeling of overwhelm into my heart. I'm going to take a deep breath in, and I exhale, and I just let my physiology relax. Just let the shoulders relax. And we may have to do this a couple times just as we're practicing. We'll do it like 3 times. And sometimes we'll do it and then a new feeling will arise because we didn't really feel overwhelmed. We actually just felt sad. So this practice will really, really expand and kind of strengthen our emotional intelligence and our ability to relate to our own feelings and unlearn the resistance that we have to different feelings. Resistance causes so much pain and suffering. Crazy. So are we ready to start? Okay, great. So let's all just close our eyes for a moment. And I just am going to invite all of us, all together as a community, to take a big inhale in, just deep breath in. And exhale. One more big inhale. And exhale with a sigh. Relax the jaw and the shoulders. One more inhale. And exhale. And with the eyes closed, I'll invite us all simply to send our gratitude to all the people on this call. Whether you know them or not, just send your gratitude out through your heart and just thank you. Thank you for being here today. There's so many things you could be doing, so many places you could be. Maybe not so many places you could be, but there's definitely other stuff you could be doing. But you chose to be here today. Thank you. Thank you for listening to something inside that brought you here. And let's just send our gratitude to everyone on this call and then offer it to yourself as well. And let the heart soften. Let the muscles of the heart soften. Let the chest relax. Let the shoulders and arms relax. And just scan your day. Go back into your day and look for a moment, if you're not feeling it now, where you felt triggered. Could be anger, irritation, agitation, anxiety. It's a big one going on right now. Or if you deal with anxiety on a regular basis, choose that. Fatigue, you can work with exhaustion. Any feeling that shows itself in your life enough that you sort of know it. You're like, oh, that one. And if you don't have one, you can always just post something in the chat and I can help you out, or just raise your hand. Okay. Beautiful. So now we're going to just summon up this feeling and allow yourself to really feel it. Like you can feel the activation in the nervous system, and it can show up as kind of a lump in the throat or tightening of the chest. We're going to do the thing that we're always sort of uncomfortable to do, which is we're just going to let it be present all the way. Some heart rate may increase. Palms might sweat. Or the mind might start, the stories. Who was right? Who was wrong? Okay. So with this presence, in this moment, you can repeat after me out loud or to yourself. It does help to practice it out loud right now if you're able. And if you're not, you just do it to yourself. In this moment, I acknowledge that I feel, and then fill in your emotion.
Irritation.
In this moment, I acknowledge that I feel agitation, anger, frustration, sadness, anxiety, whatever it is for you. And I accept that I feel this feeling. And then say your feeling. So in this moment, I accept that I feel this feeling.
And I accept that I feel this feeling.
And this is where we really have to practice, because we can kind of get in the mind like, I accept it. Stay deep in the body, take a deep breath, slow down. In this moment, I accept that I feel this. It's okay.
In this moment, I feel it.
I promise it is okay. And I bring this energy, you can say the feeling, and I bring this agitation, irritation into my heart. And if it helps to actually grab this energy and kind of put it into the heart, you can always use your hands if you need a physical gesture. And if you're using your hands, I ask that you start with your hands cupped like this under your belly button and see the energy filling in your hands. So this is under my belly button. See the energy filling in my hands, and then I, like an elevator, bring it up and sort of spill it into my heart. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Beautiful job, everybody. So we're going to do that again, because you can see how quickly you can do it once you get familiar with it. We're going to do it one more time, and then if something really did shift, if you're like, wow, that's a softening. Some people feel complete dissolution, like the feeling dissolves. Others feel like their nervous system quieted down. There's like I'm not so activated. Like, okay, I'm okay. And then we do it again, right? Until we're kind of bringing the system back down to neutral. So raise your hand if you felt a shift.
Well, I'll just share that immediately what came to mind was, and this is, we'll keep this between us.
Thursday afternoon of trust.
And then shared on YouTube. So last night I made dinner, and it was this Indian dish doll. And I was very excited because it just finished, as I was telling you, Oakley, this book about this monk who went through this incredible experience of enlightenment. And as he talked about his story, he said that he only feels full if he eats dal. And I was like, you know what? I'm making dal tonight for dinner. And my mother-in-law comes over with our two kids. And so there's always this moment a couple times a week. I said, would you like to stay for dinner? And her response, which I already know, but I still let it trigger me. Well, what did you make? And it always irritates me. Like, well, you're only staying depending on what I made. So if I made salmon or steak, I know it's a guarantee. But today I made this Indian dish. And she's like, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to stay over for dinner, right? And it immediately put me into this annoyed sort of mood. But then we had some leftover steak and salmon, as it turns out. And so, well, we're also going to have this. She said, oh, well, then I'll stay. And so we're sitting at the table, and my two kids are all, Dad, what's wrong? Nothing. You're annoyed, Dad. Grumble, grumble, grumble. And I think that just the irony of these things is that everybody else knows what's going on. My kids were like, Dad, you're annoyed. And so just that willingness to acknowledge and accept and welcome, I think is just such a powerful place. And we can do this every day.
Mm. That's so beautiful. That's a great example, Omar. I think some of us have heard this little fact before, but a feeling lasts 90 seconds in the brain. 90 seconds. This is not me. This is science. And I ask myself then, if it lasts 90 seconds, then how in the world is my aunt still mad at her ex-husband? And it's been 25 years. Like, how that anger was just 90 seconds. So we fuel our feelings with stories, and then the stories feed the feelings, and then we get into this amazingly powerful snowball, and then we end up still angry 25 years later. And that's not somebody's fault. I'm not judging my aunt at all, because we haven't been educated otherwise, right? And so in this practice, what we're doing is we're actually stopping the cycle in the brain and the mind. We're saying, nope, I take responsibility. I see you and I take responsibility for you. And then we crack open that cycle and we get off the snowball train, right? We get off that like continual momentum that one feeling can build so much that it can even make us sick, right? So one last thing I'll offer, and we'll do a quick practice again, is something that I just was writing about called the paradox of change. And the paradox of change is a phenomenon in psychology that maybe some of you have heard of. And the way it works is that the summary is nothing can change until we meet it exactly as it is, neither adding nor taking away from what it is. And so there's this power in this paradox of change that informs us that if we stop and take a moment and we acknowledge a feeling that we're feeling exactly as it is, without adding or taking away, then and only then can it change. Really, truly, alchemically transform, like gone. Right? So there's so much packed in this tiny little acknowledge, accept, welcome. It's based in neuroscience and all this fun stuff. A lot of my young adult clients who I work with, they love this one, because it's easy. They're like, oh, and then I got so mad at my mom, and then I did the acknowledge, accept, welcome, and it totally worked. Dinner was fine, right, Omar? Dinner could have been a little different, right?
But I think as you what's interesting is when my kids then said, "Dad, you're annoyed," well, then the feeling was pride. I was too proud to acknowledge them. And so then it was this compounding. So I went from just the irritation to then feeling the irritation of pride. And so I think that's what ends up happening and why somebody might hold on to something for a long period of time, because then you're like, oh, it happened. Then I feel an embarrassment or my pride is injured. And then I have an attachment to that. And these things kind of roll and they kind of create these snowball effects. And I love what you said about meet things or see things as they are. And you and I were talking about Krishnamurti recently. And he says the practice of noticing is just the examination of how you actually live. Not how you want to live or think how you ought to live or should live. Just the looking at how you actually live. Because then that in and of itself is a perpetual moment of acceptance. Even if it's the, okay, I'm accepting the irritation. Oh, I'm accepting the pride. Oops, I'm accepting that the doll actually kind of tastes good and everybody's enjoying it, right? And if we stay in that moment of constant acceptance, wow, that's pretty beautiful.
It's peace and emotional freedom in so many ways. Oh, I just love this topic. I just had a moment where I was like, wow, I just want to dive in more. Okay, so let's try this one more time all together. And if you want to work with the same feeling, that's great. And if you want to work with a different feeling, I'll invite you to do that. There's no right or wrong or rules to it. So you can do this with eyes open too, but just so that our senses are turned inward and we can be more focused. I'll ask you just now to close your eyes one more time. Just take a breath. And just pick the feeling you want to work with. I'll use, in this practice, I'll use anxiety. It's so prevalent and I know it in my own life on and off, and this practice has helped. So I'll just use that and you say whatever word is there for you, okay? So we'll do kind of I'll share the phrase, you repeat it, then we'll move on. In this moment, I acknowledge that I feel anxious. And I accept that I feel anxious. It's okay. And I bring this energy of anxiety into the field of my heart. I welcome anxiety into my heart. Take a deep breath in and exhale. And who's noticing a shift, whether subtle, like, oh, I just feel slightly more relaxed, or maybe it's different, or maybe nothing at all right now, which is fine too. You can just raise your hand physically. Yeah, Mar. Do you mind sharing?
I feel like it just deepened this the stillness inside of me. I didn't notice like it's almost like there's something I'm trying to chase just internally, and
Mm-hmm.
taking these breaths makes you realize that what I'm looking for is actually right here. And I think just doing that again helped get me closer to
Mm.
really connecting with that.
Hmm. Thank you so much. That's exactly it. That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. Good. Does anyone else want to share? You can just raise your hand. We'll scan the. Someone else was just going like this as we chose Mar there. Okay. Beautiful. Ah. Is anyone stuck and just wants a little extra support? You can also just say, hey, I don't get it. Okay. I don't see you. If you are raising your hand, you have to make it more dramatic. Okay. All right, beautiful. So that was really just such a beautiful summary of what this work does is allows us to re-presence ourselves to our essence, which is peace, stillness, quietude, and the feelings that we really do want to feel are always right under the feelings that we don't want to feel. So if we know that, we can begin to relate to these feelings that we're so used to avoiding as gifts that are just taking us to deeper stillness, that are taking us to deeper peace, and that are reinforcing our commitment to live from that place of gratitude and the place of the heart.
Well, thank you so much, Oakley, for guiding us through this practice. For those who have been part of these Thankful Thursday series, you may notice today was a little bit different by design. And this 3-part series, the Unlearning series that we're going to be doing with Oakley, starts today, and we're going to go for the next couple weeks. What I would love to hear is from you, how these sessions are working from you, because this is truly, part of our passion is to create this space with you, that this is co-created. And so email me, Omar at gthx.co. Let us know what is working for you or not, what else you would like to see. I think part of this is this experience. What we're experiencing so much around the world is a disruption. And one of the things that Oakley and I talk about is that the next guru is a sangha, meaning the next leader is a community. And that's what we really believe at G Thanks, is that this is about building community. This is why I love gratitude, that it's inherently social. It's about our relationships, and it's at that intersection of our self-care and how we show up in the world with others. And so it really is important for us to hear from you, and whether it's on these Zoom sessions, in the chat. One of the other things is we're trying to keep G Thanks free. And so downloading the app, using the app, sharing, subscribing to the YouTube channel, telling your friends. That's how this is going to grow, is that we're building this together. So in addition to thanking Oakley and thanking each of you for showing up, I also want to thank Brian Vasquez, who is our audio engineer and is behind the scenes really helping to create the experience as well. And this is the other thing that I fundamentally believe and what I love, and I think Oakley touched upon it, which is acknowledging things as they are. That means that this isn't pre-programmed, and that's so much of what is created right now, is that it's pre-programmed. And this is actually being created live, in person, as best we can be in person these days. And that's beautiful. Because when we do that, we're actually creating the world that we each want to live in. So thank you.
And just a reminder, I'm seeing all these beautiful chat comments. I'm so touched by these. Thank you, everybody. This practice that we did is on the app. I just want to remind you. So if you want support and guidance, It's right there for you on the app in the short amount of time. So very, very accessible and easy to just kind of carry around in your day. And next week, we'll move from relationship to feeling to quicker techniques, a different technique that's just as fast in relationship. I'm going to teach some energetic cleaning up in relationship. It's actually my favorite tool that I use in my life and with my clients. I use it all the time. So would love to see you again next week. And again, thank you so much for being with us. This was just so wonderful. We wouldn't be doing it without you. So thank you.
Thank you, Oakley. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.